And he was pushing a broom at Disneyland or something. He saw that old.
Old man doing a podcast. Real weirdos. We have English degrees. Real weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have a special guest today. He's here. That's right. You know him. You love him. It's Jeff Casino.
Oh, God. I was
His
really
milkshake
scared.
brings all the boys to the yard.
I was legitimately expecting someone to just, like, pop into the channel right now. Like,
Hello.
I was like, dude, who did Jesse, like, who did he book? Like, this is
They
exciting.
got Keanu Reeves to come on.
He got Uwe Boll.
That'd be great. If Uwe Boll, hey, Uwe, I know you're listening. If you want to come on and pick a movie, we'll talk about it with you.
Yeah, any movie you want.
Same with Keanu. Keanu's welcome. Keanu's super welcome.
There are
Great.
many people who are welcome. I'm just going to
Yes.
say this right now. The list is quite long.
Who's not welcome?
My mom, for sure.
I don't know.
None of our moms. We're not going to do that. But I mean, in terms of like Hollywood personalities.
I wish I was better at names.
Harvey
'cause that could be
Weinstein.
fun. I was going to say that, you fuck. You're just better at names than me.
Harvey can't come on. Bill Cosby, fuck off. You can't come on.
I mean,
Who's the other?
Kevin
Kevin
Spacey.
Spacey.
Nah.
Kevin Spacey.
James
You're
Franco.
not invited. Franco's not invited.
Is the Franco stuff, like, substantiated?
See, the Franco stuff, not only, I don't know, like, what came of it in those payments, but the fact that his, like, close friends came out and said, like, oh, we'll never work with him again. I was like, Jesus, you're done.
Yeah, but, like, people do
But
that.
you don't know
a
if
lot.
that's just angling,
You don't know.
right?
We don't
for their
know.
Career.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a bad move to have him on the podcast at this moment in time, at any rate.
Yeah.
But I showed Jeff this earlier, but are you looking forward to The Passion of the Christ 2, directed by Mel Gibson?
No, obviously. Like, I mean, it's just the first one was an absolute. When I saw the South Park episode long before I saw The Passion, because I was just completely uninterested. I was like, oh, okay, like an ultra Christ movie. I'm cool. But so I saw the South Park episode where they like call it a snuff film and they do all this kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, this is South Park being like their normal hyperbolous selves. And then only like a year or two ago, I watched it for the first time. And I was like, no, this is a 3-hour snuff film.
It's
Like,
so long. It's so boring.
It's so boring. And the only thing that's happening is this man is being tortured.
Some people don't know how insane that movie was when it came out. It like took the world by storm. It was all anyone could talk about.
It had
in,
like a
2005.
cult following. It was like
it was massive. Yeah, they would take like little children in their Bible schools to go see this film.
Oh, there were email chains about it and stuff back in the day when those were a thing between my older relatives, where it was like, Jim Cavazio is playing Jesus Christ. His initials are JC. He is 33 years old. Jesus Christ was 33. And it was like all this crazy fucking shit.
It just sounds like the shit they post on Facebook now.
Exactly. Well, they just moved, right, to now different
it's the same
social
garbage
platforms.
But do you think it'll be as violent as the last one? I hope so, right? He just gets murdered.
Well, I mean, maybe it'll just be 3 hours of him trying to roll a boulder out of the way.
What's it called? It had like a subtitle. What they should call it is like The Passion of the Christ 2 Die Harder. That would be good.
Jesus.
That would be the best name.
Just Mel Gibson leans full on into camp for it.
Oh my God. I think it's just going to be, I think it'll definitely be more subdued.
Maybe a father-son thing, you know?
I think I read the synopsis. Let me see. I have it in our little channel here. A sequel to The Passion of the Christ focuses on events 3 days between crucifixion and resurrection.
So yeah, he's just rolling the boulder.
He's just hanging out in a cave, like thinking.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's what it's going to be.
Eating snacks.
It's just like Christ in a cave.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
We're not excited for it.
I mean,
I
I kind of am in a really weird way where
I am.
I'm just interested to make fun of it. I don't know.
I need the world to be
Pay
taken
attention
up in storm.
Pay attention for that episode, folks.
Yeah. Get your big boy pants on for a very serious discussion of The Passion of the Christ 2.
Indeed. But that's not what we're talking about today.
Is it not?
Wait, what are we talking about?
What are we
today?
talking about?
We're talking about one of my favorite movies.
Scanner?
Scanners, yeah, by Cronenberg.
That's right. Welcome back to the most professional movie podcast on the internet. We're 2.5 white men with English degrees talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Today, we're talking about Through a Mirror Darkly, the 1961 black and white Swedish film from director Ingmar Bergman and starring Max von Sydow. Jeff, this was your choice.
I thought we were talking about Cronenberg Scanners.
Scanners? Did we all? What movie did you watch, Alex? I watched Bergman.
I think actually I'm on the wrong podcast. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is not the cooking podcast.
Oh, man.
That was the last episode.
Well, I got my dates mixed up, so I'll see you guys later.
Yeah. See ya. We'll be back for Passion of the Christ 2 in 2022. No, we did Scanner Darkly. Jeff, this was your choice. 2006 Richard Linklater film.
Yes, sir.
So briefly describe the film and why you chose it for the show.
Yeah, I will. Fuck your briefly. No,
All right. It doesn't have to be brief.
no, I chose Scanner Darkly. It just kind of popped in my head like any of my other choices on this podcast. I don't really make any of my choices with any kind of intent. I just go like, this is a movie I would really like to talk about. Boom. That's about as much thought. So this movie just kind of popped into my head. I believe I'd seen it before reading the book by Philip K. Dick, but that it derives from, but I chose it because it's just a really great insight on drugs and drug addiction in like a very grounded and unique way that I don't really think I've seen in any other movie before. The kind of real, like, boots on the ground viewpoint of being a drug addict and living in kind of a flop house with all your druggy friends and all the little things that come from that, funny and dark and depressing. And it's told from such a point of authority because Philip K. Dick was an unbelievable drug addict.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was.
As we see at the end of the film with the little credit to all his friends. And there's been a lot of talk about just like drugs and drug addicts and this kind of opiate epidemic and this kind of still demonization of drug addicts that we experience today. So I don't know. I just thought it was a fun movie to go over.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it in quite some time, but as soon as it started, I like the scenes were playing in my memory as I watched it, sort of thing. You know, it was so ingrained. A few surprises. I kind of forgot what the ending was, but I really enjoyed this movie as well. Alex, yeah, what's your relationship with this movie?
Oh, I loved it.
Oh, wow.
For me, I had seen a few scenes or like the beginning of it when it first came out, and this was before I really thought about movies in a critical way, so I think the animation was throwing me off. It's not animation, right? They filmed it and then they had animators paint over it.
It's called rotoscoping, I believe.
Okay, rotoscope.
So maybe that threw me off, and I was too cool for it, and I thought it was just some stupid gimmick. I've done that a lot, by the way.
You were too busy watching classic edgy cinema, like funny games.
Exactly, right? Like, I had to posture myself. So I wasn't too into these, like, literature-based sci-fi movies. And I don't know. I really, really liked the story of this movie. And I don't think that I've ever had a movie's ending be so impactful on my judgment of the film that I would never say. Like, I would never say this is a bad movie, ever. Even with its flaws and everything like that, the ending, for some reason, puts it in a group for me of movies that I would always say is good, which I think says a lot about this movie. It's not just the ending that does it, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, before we jump into the storyline, I also wondered, what's your guys' relationship to the director, Richard Linklater? Had you seen his movies before? I'm guessing you've seen at least some of them. It's pretty hard not to.
Yeah, I've seen, we were just talking about this before the mics warmed up, but...
yeah, I was guessing which of his movies Jeff had seen.
Which he got all of them. Dazed and Confused. Waking Life is probably my favorite film besides the Romeo and Juliet.
Damn,
oh,
high
really?
praise.
Yeah, Waking Life is like, I watch that movie every year religiously just because it's such an important piece of art to me. School of Rock,
Amazing
absolutely.
movie.
I mean, amazing, banger.
Yeah.
And then Scanner Darkly, and then Boyhood, which I didn't.
That's the one I missed. I missed Boyhood. I didn't know if you'd seen that.
Yeah, Boyhood. I had seen it on recommendation from being on Dax, being a viewer of Dax Shepard's podcast, because he said it was really amazing, and I found it to kind of just be kind of overhyped and derivative. But we're not reviewing Boyhood.
We're not reviewing Boyhood, thankfully.
Yeah, no, I love him, actually. I enjoy a lot of his movies, and I think he just does it for me. I don't know what it is. When it comes to the movie experience, Richard Linklater he does it for me. I was going to say, not movies that will like maybe win a lot of awards or make a lot of money or things like that. I just think his movies are extremely fun and entertaining.
Yeah, he has quite the range here. He's really good at hangout movies, I feel like. Like Dazed and Confused and Slacker are probably like one of the or two of the biggest classic hangout movies. And I think that actually carries into Scanner Darkly. I think like the first half of this movie basically functions as a hangout movie. It's just a hangout movie that features like degenerate psychopathic druggies, which is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really into that. But yeah, I mean, I did not like Boyhood. But I really liked his Before trilogy. He has all these movies, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and then Before Midnight, that he's made over the course of like 20 years with Ethan Hawke, and those are really great movies. Yeah, I think he's an interesting director for sure. I don't have a full like analysis of him because I've only seen scattered movies, but the ones that I've seen I've mostly really enjoyed.
You've seen School of Rock, though, right?
I don't remember School of Rock.
Oh,
I
Jesus.
barely remember Dazed and Confused.
How do you barely remember School of Rock, dude? I mean, that's like childhood classic.
I don't know. I think I saw it once, like when it came out.
I mean, I used to
Never
watch
saw
that
it
movie
again.
all the time on TV.
I think in my brain it's like oh, Jack Black in a silly comedy. I didn't even realize it was a Linklater film until I was looking at his filmography like yesterday.
I have it memorized.
It's a Jack Black. It's like the Jack Black silly comedy, though. It's like
Hello,
the one
this
that
is
like
Ned Schneebly.
it's the one that put him on the map. You know, like this was the movie that kind of solidified his comedy style. I don't know. I love School of Rock, but again, we're not reviewing School of Rock. Scanner Darkly, is I think the best representation of Linklater's film, artistic, and I don't know, just directorial style. There's some just incredible scenes in this movie, and it's weird talking about it like in shots or like because the rotoscoping does add a layer of disconnect from this being real. Like when you're watching a movie regular, just with actors, even though it's a movie, you can kind of get lost in it. But I always kind of feel like animation puts a block in front of that where it's always going to be animated, so that you lose a little bit of that, which is a very interesting phenomenon in this movie because it's such real, intense human content, but with this kind of rotoscoped, cell-shaded style, which, I don't know, it created a very interesting dynamic.
Well, how did you feel about the visual style, Alex? Were you a fan? Did it take a while to get used to or anything?
It did take a minute to get used to, but I will have to say, watching it on Amazon, sometimes there's like little factoids that Amazon will throw out while you're streaming.
X-ray.
That's what it is. And I saw a few things about the film, and I learned about this rotoscoping thing, and that made it way cooler. Because when it first came out, around the time that MacBooks and like Mac desktops were getting really popular again, and Photo Booth was popular because it had all of these like filters, and that was like the first introduction of social media filters, right? And I actually thought that they had lazily just shot a film through something like that when it first came out, right? Which I guess is a fair criticism. If the movie did do that, it would be like, fuck you. But when I learned about this, I was like, this is fucking badass. Like, it would be cool to be one of those people that gets the film afterwards and then you do your thing over it, right? To make it look like this and then put it all together again. It's just, I don't know. I thought it was really cool, just like construction and everything like that. And had I not known that little factoid, it would have been less cool. So I loved it. And really quick, I just have to say that this film, takes place right next to where I live.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that. I was like, this is Alex's home turf.
Yeah.
County of Orange.
L.A.
It's fucking
baby.
all of the freeways, all of the buildings and everything. I was like, I know exactly where all these freeway exits are. I know this building.
Nice.
Like,
Yeah,
it was nuts.
going back to the rotoscoping, Waking
Yes.
Life is also rotoscoped. And this it's done in a very different way. It leans way more artistic, whereas in Scanner Darkly still tries to maintain the structure of like the human face. And from time to time, there are times where like you have like the distant shot where like people don't have eyes and they're just like a mouth, and which I think is great. But Waking Life leans harder into that. But rotoscoping is incredibly expensive and labor intensive, and that's why you just don't see it anymore. I mean, computers can just do what rotoscoping does a lot better and a lot cheaper. But you can't. I don't think you can still quite get that look.
Yeah, the movie was shot over a few months, but then I believe the post-production, where it went through the rotoscoping treatment, took like a year and a half or something. Like a crazy amount of work and time went into making this movie look the way it does.
Damn.
And it's I think it's to the credit of the movie because it adds a layer of kind of haze and fog.
And psychedelia, man. Makes you feel like you're on Substance D watching this shit. Robert Downey Jr. turned into a cockroach, making noises at you. I laughed so fucking hard at that.
Yeah, and that's what I meant before by like the whole grounded aspect of the movie. Like, this is a movie that's obviously written by somebody who has sat in a room high off their ass with their friends and watched as their friends like did goofy shit to them, and they're all doing goofy shit to each other. Like, it has that edge to it where you know that the source content is genuine.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, Philip K. Dick definitely did all this stuff, all this paranoid running through the house, drug.
Like every scenario, Barris is a very great character of that representation.
Yes.
But every scenario that they have is so real. It's so like a very real scenario that drug addicts go through, where they conflate and they get paranoid and everything gets more and more and more conflated until it's like this huge like mission, and it's so interesting how well that's done in this movie.
It's done really well. For anyone who's had any like even fleeting glimpses of this kind of world, it feels very real, and the conversations feel like real conversations. That's why I said earlier it feels like a hangout movie, just starring like demented drug addicts. And I have to say, it is a piece of absolutely inspired casting to have Robert Downey Jr. as Barris.
Oh my god.
And it made me think that if we ever do a Fear and Loathing episode, he's definitely like alternate casting for Johnny Depp.
Oh, for sure.
I could see him being Hunter so well.
And I don't know about Keanu, but both Woody Harrelson and Robert Downey Jr. have had struggles with addiction of their own in the past. Mm-hmm. So they very much like fit into that role really well.
Mm-hmm. Right. It is a very Robert Downey Jr. role. There's a part of it where it seems like he's just playing himself. It's a role he knows.
I have been told, because this is like to your credit of the point of being this hangout movie. Waking Life and this movie are the two movies that me and my friend Skylar used to show to everybody that came over. It was like they were the two movies we would play because they were interesting and introspective and prompt conversation, but were still fun enough to where like you weren't so locked in. And I've been told by multiple people, I don't think this is a compliment, but a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you remind me of Barris.
Interesting. I don't think I agree, but I didn't know you when you were 17, so
yeah. I mean, not the shadiness, but just like the like douchebaggy know-it-all. Like Barris can never be wrong. He always has to like create and like circumvent a way to like invent a way where it's like someone else who gets something right. He's like, yeah, well, in that situation, he is very
he wields a vortex of logic at an incredible
and vocabulary.
Like, pace.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Incredible pace and vocabulary.
His diction is like perfectly, everything.
Yeah. I have a question about the acting. Is Keanu Reeves good in this movie? That's my question.
He's very mid-stage Keanu. Like he's at that point in his career where he kind of acted the same.
But I think it's appropriate in this one. It took me a little while to warm up to him this time. Just being a little more critical of his acting, but it's like he's playing, and this is no disrespect to Keanu. He seems like a great guy, and I like his movies a lot. But he does best when he's playing either John Wick or like a burnout. And in this movie, he is playing a burnout, and it gets more and more burned out.
It's interesting because I think it plays into the story really well. Actually, his like acting style, he's like slowly being doled into this like nobody, just this mess and like muck of different people. He doesn't even know who he is because I don't know. So I think that deadening works really well, but I don't want to say that that's him like showing his talent in this movie. I think that it kind of just all fell into place like that. But I will say that there are times where Keanu, he's an interesting one, in my opinion. He's an interesting actor. There are times where he's like been terrible, right? Excruciatingly bad. Dracula, with Gary Oldman.
Right.
But even around that same time, he was doing movies like Speed, which are fucking amazing and like great movies, and his acting was perfect. So I think that people have just casted him early on based on looks, rather than his acting talent. And I think Jeff's right. This is like just the beginning of when he was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to try and just kind of go off and do my own thing. And so he's working through some stuff here as an actor, I feel like. Whereas everyone else, besides Winona Ryder, is pretty much like on par.
I'm pretty sure this is right around when his partner died as well. So really?
Like,
in real life. So I think that there is a level of just like subdued, like kind of abandonment of anything. And I think that's very well captured in this movie. And to the point of like him being good in this movie, like he has a great diction and he's really great at making things making lines. And so like all of the monologues that are excerpts from the book, like all of like how does a scanner see? Does it see darkly or clearly? Like all of those little monologues are so wonderfully delivered and so beautifully encaptured, and you can like feel the pain and like the questioning and like the loss in his voice. And so those moments, I really think he's able to convey a lot. But he's also using like Philip K. Dick's incredible writing style. So there's an element of credit that needs to go to Philip K. Dick.
Oh, absolutely. To clarify my thoughts on the Keanu question, I think he's pretty well cast in this. I do, and he won me over more and more as it went along. And I think that speaks to, like, there are different categories of actors, right? There are people who are transformative, like Philip Seymour Hoffman off the top of your head, like people who could just chameleon into all kinds of roles. And then there are actors who aren't like that, but you need to cast them in the right kind of roles. And that's not like to denigrate their acting ability whatsoever. I think it's like much more difficult than we give people like Keanu Reeves credit for to inhabit the spaces that he can inhabit as an actor. It just doesn't happen to be like Daniel Day-Lewis level range.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's all about the casting. Like, I don't think it was his fault that he was so terrible in Dracula. It's just like, why did you put him in that movie? He clearly was not suited for it and clearly just did not have that range to do that, especially when you put him up against like Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, and Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman.
And
it's absurd.
It's just it's like, why are you making this kid do a struggling English accent?
Yeah.
As an actor, it's like important to do that shit. But this film, actually, I just want to say he's part of the reason why I feel like the ending is so impactful. The way he acts that final scene out, and he like kind of looks up to the sky, and he's like, "Oh, I saw death growing from the ground or from the earth." It's like the way he delivered all those lines. I was like, "Fuck yeah,
dude!"
This scene is amazing.
I mean, for the sake of me and choosing this film, I really think we should just talk about the ending in its own little bubble, because the ending of this movie is incredible. So
let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to start that now, or do we want to maybe go into Philip K. Dick?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I have like I talked about how the first half is basically a hangout movie. And I couldn't remember the ending, or I wasn't thinking about it. And so I was like, what is this movie about, though? That was my question. I haven't read the book. I've read a lot of Philip K. Dick.
I filled you in on that?
On what?
Would I could answer that question. I mean, obviously a book, what something is about is your interpretation.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me finish this thought real quick.
Oh, sorry.
I like that the narrative felt very loose up until the point where it wraps up at maybe the last 10 minutes. And I think it did a lot for the story's credit that it ends the way that it does. It made the movie about something, which even if it didn't, I think this movie would still be really interesting to me particularly. But the fact that it ended the way that it did just did it a really good service.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. This movie does, if I'm going to talk about its faults, it definitely tries to cram a very complicated story in a very short amount of time, and you can see the kind of fragmented aspect of the storytelling where I don't know, to me this movie was very obviously a book. It had that feel to it where I was like, there's much more here than what's on the surface, but what they do show is brilliant and they do it very well. My one biggest complaint would be like how they handled the character Frack. He's much more of a bigger character. He's actually like a central character throughout the book, and he kind of represents like the falling addict. And there's a lot of really great Frack scenes.
He's a great the performance by Rory Cochrane is incredible though.
Yeah, I mean he nailed Frack as like a person. Like he nailed that style really well as the book described him. But you know, Philip K. Dick is also one of my favorite authors. You know, one of the godfathers of science fiction, and went through many years of drug addiction. And so this, like we were mentioned, this was a very real thing for him. And so this story is basically the setup of Bob Arctor. It's there's a group of people who need to infiltrate New Path, which they believe is the producer and manufacturer and distributor of Substance D, which is produced by a small little blue flower. And so in order to do that, and they mention this in the movie, they say, how does New Path have the only place where our scanners can't breach? A scanner is the kind of technology that's used in this totalitarian high surveillance world that this movie takes place in. There's a lot of really hyper tech surveillance, and everything can be infiltrated. Pretty much everyone's house is bugged. There's surveillance everywhere. And so he's asking, like, why can't we see New Path's facilities? And they're like, oh, that's the deal they have with the government.
Oh, that's what a scanner is?
That's what a scanner is. Yes.
I didn't know that. Did you know that, Alex? Did you pick that up?
I had no idea.
Yeah, a scanner is how the government looks into you as a person. And that's why when Keanu says, what does the scanner see? Does it see clearly or darkly? And he's asking is the scanner seeing me for who I am or who I've become? And how will it judge me?
Got it. The context.
There's a lot of, like, there's a huge idea of that, like, the Big Brother aspect is it's almost its own entity. Like, it is controlled by the government, but, like, the scanner itself judges you and makes a decision. It's almost like God. And
maybe they could have handled that a little bit better.
It's just a really complex thought because they don't give enough context to the world that they're living in. They show the sort of hyper surveillance, but yeah, they're setting up Bob Arctor to infiltrate New Path, but to do that, they need to take somebody from the top, from somebody who can absolutely infiltrate because they were in the sheriff's department, and they have to systematically break them to pieces until they are able to be basically chemically lobotomized by Substance D and then inserted into New Path, which is a recovery facility, and basically almost like a what do they call that? Like a person, like an agent, like a sleeper agent. Sleeper cell. Yeah, he's almost like a sleeper cell where like they're implanting him with information as they go on. You see that in the end of the movie where Donna's driving him to New Path, and she's kind of quickly telling him everything he needs to know in his subconscious so he'll remember it and be able to report back to her on Thanksgiving. And so it's kind of how these people destroy a man, and it's from that man's perspective. He's totally ignorant to it. He thinks he's doing this himself.
Yeah, you're not aware of it until he's broken. Yes. Until after he's broken and already in New Path. And I like that. I like the way that they structured that. It makes the first half, it feels like there are stakes involved, but you're not really sure what they are. You think maybe it's just the stakes of sanity for Keanu Reeves / Bob Arctor. Like, is he just off his rocker? You see his mind start to fall apart, and you're only aware of the grand narrative, the overarching narrative at like the very, very end.
Yes.
I think, yeah, I really like that reading because I think it's exactly the way I experienced this movie. It's like you knew something was tense, right? It could have been the drugs. It could have been that he was getting addicted to the drugs and he could be getting in trouble, you know? And I didn't quite know whether or not...
You're sitting there thinking, is he a gigantic drug dealer? Is he just not aware of it? Is he so far down the rabbit hole of his own addiction and psychosis that he's like blocking it out or something?
Exactly. And so, like you said, the theme of sanity is what I felt like was at stake, right? And then the romantic relationship with Winona Ryder's character, Donna, it fell kind of flat in the middle of the movie. It was like the film was like, we're not going to pay attention to this anymore. And then when it came back, I was actually very surprised by the twist that she happens to be Hank, his supervisor at work.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And that's when the pieces for me started to fall into place, that like they had kind of set this guy up and everything. But I had no idea then about the little, secret spy injection into the new path thing. And I think it's interesting too that it was just a total gamble. Like, it wasn't an insured task, right? Where they get to the crux of the morality of the film.
Sorry,
Jeff's
I'm like
just dying to jump in.
To talk. I'm
yeah,
like
no, you're good. I'm
at
done.
the
I'm
bit
sorry.
to talk. Please edit out all my interruptions, Jesse. For God's sake.
I would have, but now you said that.
Fuck you. So I know, dude. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be interrupted. This is one of those movies that it's like it is a piece of literature, and this is what we do as English majors. This is what we've been trained to do, is break literature down into its line by line analysis and create connections and context throughout other points in the literature. And this movie is like a proverbial fucking playground to do that. Like, it's a movie that I always feel you have to watch twice, because you need to watch it once, get all the information, and then watch it again and put all the pieces together like a puzzle. Like, there's so many little pieces where Donna is implementing these small code phrases into Keanu's mind. Like,
maybe you should buy her some blue flowers.
She says when they're talking about cats and they're like tripping out together, and she's like, just dripping little spring flowers with blue in them might come up first. Like, she's putting these little thoughts into his mind about blue flowers over and over again. And the fact that she doesn't do substance D, she only does coke. And so that's kind of
Don't they do it together once? She says, let's go drop some death.
Yeah, she says drop some death. That was a poorly written line. She's kind of trying to goad Bob into being in a better mood. So she's saying, hey, Bob, let's go back to my place and you can drop some death. And, we'll get high and we'll kind of chill out and get some tequila. And he's thinking, oh, I'm going to get laid finally. And so, but when they put it in the movie, they stumble over it and they kind of make it seem like Donna's doing it as well. But in the movie, she never takes D, and she only smokes joints.
Their relationship is a little bit undercooked, for sure.
It's not undercooked. It's a relationship between an actual undercover officer and somebody who's totally fallen, and she's acting like an actual undercover. She doesn't want to fuck her target. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to have sex with the guy she's like trying to dismantle. So she pretends like, oh, I do too much coke. I do too much coke, and I can't be touched. That's her being a good detective, creating a situation in where there's a block where she doesn't have to do something. Oh, I just do coke. I don't do substance D. Bob didn't do that because he wanted to fall. He wanted to collapse and become nothing. They picked him specifically because of that. We see that with a little bit of exposition showing his life prior to being a drug addict with his wife and children, and just working for the sheriff's department and being a good citizen. And you see like this kind of specific way of like how a good undercover acts and how a shitty undercover acts.
It is at the beginning, that's another thing that I thought the stake was at too. I thought it might be like one of the dark detective movies where, he's just like dancing the line between being a criminal himself. But I thought it was really sad, and like it was really poignant when Hank, still in the character of Hank. Also, I just want to point out how cool those changing animation things were. At first, I thought I was like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Some of the faces on there on the change.
Yeah,
it's Philip K. Dick.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, they used his visage.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a
That's
few.
cool.
There's a lot of
Tupac too, I think.
I don't know about
No, I'm just kidding.
that. Okay, I was like, damn. I think he was still alive.
No,
He
no.
was dead actually.
Yeah, 2006. Tupac was long,
was he?
quote unquote dead.
Yeah, he died in
Question
'96.
mark?
Or did he?
Or
Did
he?
Okay.
Anyway,
We are not a conspiracy podcast.
let's move along.
Although Alex Jones is in this film, and I want to say that
Oh, yeah.
probably was my favorite
He's in
scene.
Waking Life too.
We could do that. Is
Okay.
that your favorite scene?
Uh,
Alex Jones.
No.
Alex Jones getting taken off the street by like corrupt cops or whatever.
Just by
no,
police.
when they tell Keanu, like, oh, Donna was never the target, really. We were just going for Barris. And that's when, what's his name? Bob Arctor?
Yeah, Bob Arctor.
That's when he like starts to, I don't know, figure out everything that's going on. And I just feel like the connection then between him and Winona Ryder, it like got so much stronger at the end, and everything made sense, and it got so much sadder to me. I don't know. It was just terrible.
Yeah, I love that you brought all that up, Jeff, because it had the impact that it did, but I didn't intellectualize afterwards the fact that like re-examining all of these scenes with them together, with Winona Ryder
That's
and
what I was saying. You
Keanu.
have to watch it again.
So it's
and,
like, yeah,
put the
that's what
info.
I like your reading there. It's you see all the things you didn't see the first time.
Yeah, it's like now that you have the ending in hand, you're like, oh, Barris was just kind of like a plant, like the whole time. Like he was just
It's a red herring.
he's just a
kind of
red
thing.
herring.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like there's so many little things that start to make sense, like the doctors and the way they kind of like are almost what is it called in courts, guiding the witness. They're almost like guiding Keanu to the wrong answers. Leading, thank you. They're almost leading him like to the wrong answers, and you kind of see like he's starting to realize, like, is everyone against me? Like, am I just have the drugs made me into such a person that I am the ultimate enemy to everybody? There's many scenes where people look at him like disgusted, or like, especially the female doctor. She very much is like very matter of fact and like kind of treats him like shit. But then there's like moments of levity really quickly where her tone flips. There's so much tonal shift in the way people talk to Bob Arctor that it's almost, you can't quite tell, like him, who is his friend and who is his enemy. He's totally alone because everybody seems to be against him.
The movie makes you paranoid. As Bob gets more
Absolutely.
paranoid, you get more paranoid, and that's one of the brilliant things about it. Absolutely.
I was going to say, I just love the fact, too. I mean, it's based off of a book, so it has to follow. It doesn't have to, but it should follow the literature. But I don't know if I could have handled, it would have still been a great movie, but I don't know if I could handle it emotionally if Bob was just, one flew over the cuckoo's nest, like, was total lobotomy and just didn't remember. Because they were talking how they're like, hopefully one of those dusty brain cells will like fire and remember what it's supposed to remember. And the fact that he slipped the flower into his boot is just very reassuring. And it made the movie much sweeter than it needed to be, I guess.
It's not all for nothing.
Exactly. The rest, the beginning of the movie is pretty like, it's not edgy, it's just seedy. You feel not only paranoid, but you feel like a little dirty, like watching the film, because anyone who's done drugs or even been in a young college house with a bunch of dudes, like that's what it looks like. There's just trash everywhere. There's paranoid people just running their mouth, going crazy. And the ending of the movie just really tied it up for me. And if it wasn't there, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did.
Definitely. I mean, it's like, I've been in my fair share of flop houses, and it's definitely a great representation of that kind of ordered chaos that addicts have, where it's like everything, they know where everything is, but from the outside perspective, it's absolute madness. And you're like, what the fuck is this place?
They're operating on their own, just insane, logical, I don't know, plane of existence.
Absolutely. I mean, we'd be remiss to the listener to go through all of our favorite scenes, but just please, like,
we should do them though. I'm gonna go pee and then we'll do them.
Okay. Opportunity to light this joint up, because all of this will be edited out. I'm so happy you like the movie, dude.
Oh,
I'm so happy
good.
you like this movie. Like, it makes me cry at the end every time.
Really?
Every time. I'll mention that in the actual recording, but I'll go further into that. But yeah, I'm an addict, and so
yeah,
that's
I mean,
that it touches a lot, because I've lost a lot of friends to this, and it's just that final moment was very, like, I don't know. But yeah, again, I'm not going to mention that, but yeah.
We're here?
Yeah.
Weird.
All right.
Put this joint out.
What was that?
So let me put this joint
put
out.
the joint out. Okay. Sorry, you couldn't hear me.
Sorry.
I think get angry.
That was hilarious. I heard him every single time because I knew that he had said that before. That was hilarious to listen to.
Maybe we'll keep it in. We'll see.
Yeah.
Alex, do you have a favorite scene? I think, like, if people have watched this movie, then they'll be happy to hear us talk about the scenes that we loved, because it is that kind of movie.
It is,
right? Where you have a favorite scene.
My favorite scene was definitely the final conversation between Bob and Hank, and then, like, I was kind of unsettled because Bob leaves. The main character, Keanu Reeves, leaves the office, but the camera and the scene is still in Hank's office. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what's going on here? Why aren't you following the main character? Like, I want to see what the ramifications of that conversation are on our protagonist are. And instead it's stuck there, and then it revealed who Hank was, and I just love how they did that. And I loved the music in that scene, and I don't know. It was interesting because I was like, how does this guy have Donna's number? How does she know where he is? Because he didn't tell her.
She'll be here in 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Like, what the hell is going on?
Doesn't say where.
Very odd.
She just knows that she knows that Bob is just gone. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's such a great point, Alex. That scene makes me to this day physically uncomfortable, because you kind of start to root for Bob in a weird way. You kind of want him to succeed. You want him to get out of this rut because you see a good person there. And Hank is so cold and callous and just like almost like just like laughing at him at times. Like, you're in a bad way, buddy. It's like,
lights up
you,
the cigarette.
Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is a position I didn't ask to be. No one put a gun to your head. No one put it in your mouth. And this is definitely like Donna speaking as someone who has
other cops cope with it.
Yeah, that's how she has successfully managed to cope with it herself.
Yeah.
And so you get an element to that. And you can start, when you watch it again and you see Hank, you can see Donna's body language in the way he talks.
Okay.
Check those scenes again. You can see, like, when she says, "And we got him," and she does a little, like, fist pump. It's a very, like, it's very dainty the way it's done. I don't know. It's very Donna to me. And that scene, I love that you picked that scene because it's physically uncomfortable as all hell. And then you get like a cool, like, those hallways with the red green lights. They're meant for so undercovers never run into each other. That's why they're like that. They tell you when the hallway is clear so that you can come out in your actual, like, person, and undercovers never see each other.
Just like a plain bathroom.
Yep.
Just like a scanner darkly? Question mark.
What's your favorite scene, Jesse?
I got a few. They're all like all hangout scenes. I love it when they're in the car and they're trying to figure out if Barris actually left the door open with a note saying to come on in, and he's just being as obfuscating as possible in answering the question, just talking in circles. There's also the scene where he comes back with the 18 speed bike and then figuring out the whole that it's not 18 speed and then deciding it's a conspiracy against them. Just this hilarious drug conversation.
The bike
I love that
conversation.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the high conversations. Anything with Robert Downey Jr. talking, I'm in love when the movie is doing it. I also love when Frick decides to kill himself, but he like takes the wrong drugs. And what does it say? The creature comes up and it says, "Your sins will be read to you ceaselessly in shifts throughout eternity. The list will never end." I was laughing so hard.
That's a perfect segue.
1,000 years later, they had reached the 6th grade, the year he had discovered masturbation.
And it's like, oh, fuck. Like, it's over.
We have so long to
And
go.
he's sitting there, he's like, well, at least I bought good wine.
I mean, it's a perfect segue. My favorite scene is the suicide of Charles Frack. Like, that is it's like the way they did it. It's great in the book, but the way they did it in the movie actually to me was better. Because in the book they kind of like stagger it because they talk about how Freck like wants to kill himself, but it's just like he's got to like find the right time. It's not like he's scared. He's just like overly drug addicty about it, where he's like, oh, I got to find the right time and the right place and all this stuff. And but that scene was done so beautifully. The interdimensional creature with like the 1,000 eyes on its head. And it was just perfect. Like, yeah. And then Charles Frack
and
just
the narration.
Just the resignation. Like, Charles Frack realized that he wasn't gonna go like off. I wish at least I got good wine. Yeah. There was a great the Fountainhead. Dude,
yes.
the scene
By
is so
Ayn Rand.
good. He would be found lying on his back on his bed with a copy of Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead and an unfinished letter to Exxon protesting the cancellation of his gas card. That way, he would indict the system and achieve something by his death.
This is the height of dark comedy in the film.
So
for sure.
fucking funny, dude. Oh my god, I was dying. Like that scene still makes me laugh so bad. The next thing he saw, a creature from between dimensions was standing beside his bed, looking down at him disapprovingly.
Yes. Yeah, that made me laugh almost as hard as the 1 second where Robert Downey Jr. turns into a cockroach and goes.
He flicks his tongue out, and that's such like we were saying that earlier. Like, I don't know how many of my friends have actually done that very thing to me while I'm tripping balls.
You're high, and your friend just fucks with you in this microscopic way. That's perfect. Yeah.
Yep.
That scene is hilarious to me, the final scene, because I think that the writing in that, the part where he says that they'll take shifts.
Oh,
I
yes.
love how an interdimensional like creature even needs to be like, yeah, this is way too fucking long.
Gonna read
We need to get
him in shifts.
Yeah, we need to get another interdimensional creature in here.
In shifts is if you want to describe Philip K. Dick's writing style, in shifts,
sake.
that part is so
man.
Philip K. Dick. Like that right there is so quintessentially his writing.
That makes the paragraph. That makes that whole part of the story just in shifts.
Like, in 2 words, he's able to describe just how long this list is.
Exactly.
Like that's really great. Like, I know, and then just of course, a couple of my favorite scenes. I mean, some honorable mentions would be pretty much any scene where Keanu is monologuing from the book. Those moments, what does a scanner see? And then one of probably my favorite line in the whole movie is I'm cursed and cursed again. I'll only wind up dead this way, knowing very little and getting that little fragment wrong too. Like that. Whoa, that was like existentialism wave just washes over you where you're like, yep, that's pretty much the extent of all of our lives is knowing very little and getting that very little wrong.
Yeah, on the topic of the Philip K. Dick prose, I think if I were to say one problem I had with the movie, which is a very small problem, I loved this movie. It did feel like there was a little bit of a shift between the movie talk and the Philip K. Dick talk, like the monologues. You're like, oh, that's a monologue from the book, and it just stood out. I'm not saying it's bad or anything like that. It just happens to stand out.
Yep.
And that's what I think is one of the main difficulties with interpreting literature to film, written literature to film. It's not only like, what are you going to include? What are you not going to include? Which characters are you going to just morph into one character because you don't have the fucking time? Which all makes sense. But it's really, really hard to put yourself up as a screenwriter to someone like Philip K. Dick. Like, if you're going to adapt The Hungry Caterpillar, okay. But if you're going to do something like really big, you know, and there's lots of dialogue heavy driven prose in the literature, it's always going to stick out.
Imagine if this movie was its length, but all the prose. We might like it, but it would be universally hated.
I don't know. I don't think
Right?
I think it would be terrible.
It's like
think it would work.
the
Exactly
whole
what the
book is written
screenwriter-
like that.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
that's why it's so like weirdly juxtaposed, is because Richard Linklater did, I think, a really good job of making this film and this content digestible.
Yeah, he did a good job adapting the screenplay. It was him. It was
Exactly. So
Linklater.
when you hit the moments of the book, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is how the book's written. Because, you know, Philip K. Dick was doing his thing like only a little later than Tolkien. You know what I mean? Like Philip K. Dick's
Yeah,
like
the 50s.
like the 50s and stuff like that. Like
Yeah, he was born in 28.
yeah, like he was writing and coming up with science fiction while Tolkien was writing Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Like, so this is very old content that they're dealing with, and it has that style to it, that very linguistic and elegant style that was even from a drug addict very indicative in that era of writing.
Philip K. Dick is a weird writer to me. I fucking love him.
Love him.
But like, I think a lot of the time his writing is not very good. Like, it's not very well structured, and the prose isn't that great. It's like more about ideas.
Yes.
It makes me want to read Scanner though, because a lot of these soliloquies are really great and profound and really well done. So I wonder if this was like a rare moment of his, like, actually having writer's skill as opposed to just like storyteller's skill. He's a much better storyteller and thinker than he was a writer.
It's a difference if Philip K. Dick is trying to tell a story off an acid trip that he was having, binged with coke, and
Right.
like conflating the ideas and creating something cool like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep or Valis or any of these kind of more like heady science fiction stories that don't have much like context or plot to them. Whereas in Scanner Darkly is a movie that's dedicated and about his life and his friends. That's something that's very specific about this movie that we can't gloss over, is that this movie is about loss, and not about entirely, but it has a heavy theme of loss and friendship. And
It's a more personal story to him than a lot of his narratives. Is what
exactly.
you're
So
saying,
yeah,
I
the
believe.
book I think you'd really like if that's what you're looking for, because the book reads very clearly and more of like a novel and has a coherent story, and that kind of has an ABCD plot. And so I think you would actually like that more.
Yeah, I love Androids. I've read it many times.
Yeah.
That's a great example of what I'm talking about, because I don't think that book is well written on like the sentence level a lot of
Sure.
the time, but it's just an amazing galaxy of ideas like spider webbing in and out of each other.
I mean, his influence is unquestionable.
But speaking of Dick on film, which is not as dirty as it sounds, I promise. Where does this rank? Because you have some other great ones. You have Blade Runner, of course. You have Total Recall, although I'm not sure like how closely that goofy Arnold Schwarzenegger movie follows the original storyline.
Yeah, I would probably. I mean, me personally, I put Scanner Darkly as the best representation of Philip K. Dick's books and ideas. Blade Runner is a loose interpretation of androids.
What about Paycheck starring Ben Affleck?
I don't know what
Yeah,
that is.
It's bad.
Okay.
It is based
The
on
Man
Dick,
in the High
though.
Castle was, I thought, actually a very bold attempt, and I think that they did a really good job with the TV show until the very end. I think it ran out of steam and it was ended terribly, and I also think that the caliber of actors that they had was really, really bad. The main character of that show basically ruined the show.
Agreed.
She and her two love interests were probably the worst actors on the whole project, and I've never seen them act again. So Rufus Sewell was in it, however, and he was great.
We gotta do Dark City someday.
Dark City is a great movie.
Nothing to do with Philip
but
K. Dick, just Rufus Sewell. Although it could have been, actually. It's a very Dickian concept.
It is.
What about The
But
Adjustment
The Man in the
Bureau
High Castle is good. I haven't seen
with
that.
Matt Damon? So there's two ones you guys need to see, hilariously starring Ben Affleck and Matt Damon.
Great.
What's it? A Minority
Fuck.
Report? That's a good one.
Are you just talking about movies now, or movies that are off Philip K. Dick books?
These are all off Philip K. Dick books.
Minority Report is a Philip K. Dick book?
Yeah,
Really? I didn't even.
according to the internet, it might have been called something else. I just saw a list of movies that are
it's
based
one of
on
his short
book.
stories. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Which
One of
I
his endless short
yes,
stories.
It is a big debate on whether Philip K. Dick is a better short story writer or novelist. There are a lot of people in the camp of like his short stories are far, far better than his novels. But I haven't really delved that hard into his short stories yet. I have the complete works of his short stories as one book, but I haven't gotten into it.
A lot of them are very similar. He's very
What
afraid
about-
of robot apocalypses.
Have you seen Next, Jesse?
Oh, that's the Nicolas Cage one, right?
Yeah.
I have. I don't remember it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't look very
Is that
good,
what we're
but-
doing next?
No. No.
I mean, to tie it all back into the film real quick, though. I mean, the ending, as we've kind of touched on, is very magical and special in its own way. Of Bob kind of becoming so lobotomized that they feel safe enough to transfer him to the agricultural division of New Path, and to which he discovers that indeed New Path is growing the deadly flower. And, Bob notices it, and they do a little cute line where he's like, when am I going to see my friends? And he's like, well, you see them on holodays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. So Thanksgiving, that'll be the next one. And he like goes and sees it. And like you're saying, Alex, like I looked down, saw death growing from the ground. And there's a great point that when he says when he stands up, he can't see them anymore. And I thought that was like really interesting. Like when he stands up from the field, they're invisible. It's only when he bent down, he actually could see them all. And I just thought that was like a great kind of metaphor on what Substance D did to these people.
Yeah, I mean, even the way that, if you want to read it in the way that, like, I don't know, only when you are in the low doldrums of life, right? And you are in, like, the dirty, seedy social circles that Bob was in. That's when you, like, see the real workings of the machine going on, right?
Yeah, this movie's awesome. It's visually super interesting. It's frequently hilarious. I was laughing out loud at least 3 separate times for like quite a while.
Yeah.
Becomes really impactful at the end, as we've detailed. It leads you into this like psychosis state where you're trying to figure out what's going on. And I always love that in a movie. Great performances. Robert Downey Jr. and oh God, what's his name? Help me out here.
Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson just absolutely smashed this movie. They
Let's
own
go
it.
get those orphan gears, man.
Yeah, as the junkies, they're just phenomenal. And yeah, it's a sweet movie. I'm glad you picked it.
Yeah,
I had a lot of fun.
I'm glad I picked it. I'm
Same.
glad Alex really enjoyed it. That was
Oh, I
important
loved
to me.
it.
And the ending, the very ending, like the very, very final little crawl, there's a dedication to all of the friends that Philip K. Dick had lost to addiction.
And himself.
And
I
it's
teared up.
Yeah, I tear up at the end of this movie every
Yeah.
time. I mean, just like it's either deceased or permanent psychosis or permanent like vascular damage, permanent brain damage.
So, yeah, I think the Phil he refers to is him.
Well, he's in a lot of his own books. But yes, there is
Yeah, so, like,
there.
It says to Phil, like permanent pancreatic
That's
damage.
where he died. Yes, he does. Phil is him for sure. But he also inserts himself into his books as far as characters as well. Like I believe he's
got it.
like a representation of Frack in this book.
It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. That's our hackneyed critic review for Metacritic.
Oh, boy. All right.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Real Weirdos. Next week we're going to talk about a vastly different film. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I'll just say that.
All right.
And we'll wrap it up here.
Yep. Thanks, you guys, joining me on this fun ride of one of my favorite films.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Chicka chaka chapo. Now our podcast is done. and we have to run. We know it is sad, but we had so much fun. Don't be bereft, Jesse, Alex, and Jeff. We'll be back real soon. The Reel Weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long.
And he was pushing a broom at Disneyland or something. He saw that old